Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of The Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 16th of March. So coming to the first discussion. Now basically today there is only one article which is important. It is a column article on environment and environmental related issues. I think this is going to be a pattern because elections are due. So majority of the editorial articles are very political and they are of no use to us. So that is why we also get an opportunity to discuss this particular article in detail. Also, I have given a detailed description of this entire article because this is an article that was important in toto. The article was something that had every single point that was relevant and it could be used in our answer. So that is why I have done a complete written material is what I have provided in this particular discussion. So coming to the article is named as a fresh warning and it is context with regards to the 6th edition of the Global Environment Outlook, which has been released by the United Nations Environment Program. Now the first question here is a PT question, that the Global Environment Outlook is what is released by the UNEP. So this is something that you should know. Now coming to the issues that have been discussed, the first issue is that of the poorly enforced environmental laws. Now the reason in India that pollution is posing such a major challenge is that the laws that are there for environmental protection are not enforced. So that is one issue which has been highlighted. The next issue which has been discussed in the editorial is with regards to the linear model for economic growth, and this is something that is very important because this is also a keyword that you can use. Now by linear model of economic growth, here the editorial means that what is happening is that we are taking out resources from the soil and then we are using it for the economy and then they are entering the atmosphere. What is happening is that they are not going back to the soil. That means a circular economic growth which involves recycling is what is not happening at present. So this is what is suggested, that there should be a circular economic growth model rather than a linear one, and this is going to be a key word also. Now definitely pollution is having some ill effects. The ill effect is first and foremost enumerated on health. This is what is resulting in a lot of premature mortality. It is impacting the quality of life, and some data is what is given vis-a-vis India. This is that 1.24 million people in India have died prematurely due to environmental pollution in the year 2017. This is an opener statement. I often suggest, I have seen that students often face difficulty in writing introduction in their answers. So these kind of statements, whenever you come across these statements, these are opener statements. For example, you have a question on environment and you do not know how to introduce your answer. You can simply say that according to the Global Environment Outlook report, approximately 1.24 million people in India died or prematurely due to environmental pollution in the year 2017. This gives a good impression, it shows your knowledge, and it is also a good opener statement. So you should keep a record of these kind of statements whenever you come across these statements. Next, what is important is the impact on agriculture. The agricultural yields are coming down. They are stressed due to the average increase in temperature and erratic monsoons. So definitely the impact is twofold, which is that on food security and health is what has been discussed here. So definitely the next is what has been analyzed is with regards to some suggestions that India should do. So India should take in this regard to curb environmental pollution. The first suggestion is that the human cost of poorly enforced environmental laws is something that India needs to assess, and that human cost is to the tune of 1.24 million as has been mentioned above. Also, what is required is that India needs to end the business as usual policies that are going on in the country. It needs to curb the use of fossil fuels and toxic chemicals across the spectrum of the economic activity is what has been suggested. Next, the editorial is calling for an aggressive monitoring of air quality in cities. Here it has been suggested that once this aggressive monitoring is what is done, it is highlighted that what are the dangers of pollutants in the air. People themselves will be motivated and willing to shift towards cleaner sources of energies is what has been recommended. Also, it has been suggested here in the editorial is discussing that this particular report has also mentioned that the top 10% of the populations globally in terms of wealth are responsible for 45% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and the bottom 50% are only for 13%. You should know that India has for long stood upon common yet differentiated responsibilities. India has said that the major share of working towards environmental protection should be borne by the Western countries who have for long been polluting the earth, and also at present there is a huge amount of discrepancy that is occurring because these countries which are totaling to only 10% of the population are polluting 45% of the emissions. So this is something that is a matter of economic this is an inequality that is existing in the Western and the Eastern world, that people who in the poorer countries do not even have basic facilities like electricity, whereas the Westerners are wasting a lot of electricity, they are using a lot of energy, and that is what is resulting to greenhouse gases. So this is some important data that can be replicated. Also, what has been mentioned here is that pollution impacts the poorer citizens, as has been seen, that even though they are not the main source of pollution, they are the most impacted ones. So this is some irony which has established vis-a-vis environmental pollution, and this is one aspect which we must bring out in our discussions whenever we are discussing about environment and environmental pollution. Another thing that has been suggested is with regards to the coal-based power plants in India, which should conform to the emission norms at the earliest, or they should be shut down in the favor of renewable energy resources. Vis-a-vis transport emissions, some suggestions have been given that India needs to shift towards green mobility. Electric vehicles is what needs to be implemented in India. Next, what has been suggested is with regards to the groundwater pollution. Now here, this is a very, very important piece of data that India is the leading extractor of groundwater. Groundwater pollution is one of the major hot topics for UPSC, and any time a question can come on that, because India's groundwater is not only being over extracted, it is also getting polluted because of the metals that are there in the soil itself. They are getting dissolved in the groundwater. So this is something that is resulting in pollution of the groundwater, and it has several health impacts also. That is what is important. It has been suggested that water should also be a part of circular economy, which means that water should also be recycled, is what has been suggested. Next, what has been discussed here is that the state governments are not showing any urgency to augment the rainwater harvesting, which should be done at priority. And last, what has been suggested is the need for new storage areas. These new storage areas will help in the times of drought, when monsoon is short or is failing, and also when monsoon is in excess. These storage areas can act as dams, and they can prevent flooding in major areas, is what has been suggested. So this is a solution that even we should replicate in our answers. Indeed, the entire article is a very, very important one. All the points mentioned here are relevant for us and can be used in our answers for the mains, especially in the general studies paper 3. The topic is something that is very, very important. So that's all for today's discussion. I thank you all for watching the video.